President Trump, of course, addressed the nation last night on the war in Iran, declaring it a massive success. The president reiterating his claims that the war will be over shortly.
Joining us this morning, Dr. Michael Bitzer, political science professor over at Catawba College, joining us with some new insight, new polling about how folks here in North Carolina are feeling about the handling of this war. We should say this was taken before the speech last night, of course. But in a new Catawba-YouGov poll, Mr. Trump's approval rating is down 42%, with 55 down to 42% with 55% disapproval. That's the widest gap you guys have seen in the last year. Do we know why?
Well, I think it is very much fitting into the classic midterm election environment. We know that the midterms are oftentimes driven by the approval or disapproval of the president, and usually voters have buyer's remorse from the presidential election. They go into the midterm and they say, you know what, I'm just not happy with the party in power, and that means that it's the president's party. And so I think that that gap outside the margin of error really does show over the past year how North Carolina has been trending. It's very similar to the national dynamics. We're not as against the president as it is nationally, but these numbers do show some kind of unhappiness amongst the voters.
So let's talk specifically now about this conflict in Iran. Airstrikes are one thing, right? But when you talk about ground troops, that's very different. We know that North Carolina has a number of military bases, and its voters are opposed to having those troops on the ground there in Iran. In fact, your poll found that 58% against that, only 18% in support. Why the big difference?
Well, I think certainly the case has not been made. I mean, we're a month into this military conflict. The president has articulated a number of reasons, but when it comes to actual boots on the ground, I think North Carolinians really do feel that that is a step that needs to be justified. You know, the launching of military weapons, the missiles, all of that is kind of in the abstract. When you start to see boots on the ground, and in particularly when casualties start to come out of it, I think that that's the reason for that 40-point gap. And in fact, among Republicans, if you look at that chart, they are very much also against it, but it's very close. Democrats and independents, they tend to follow the same dynamic, very much opposed to it, but it's almost evenly split among Republicans.
How much of this do you think is the actual war itself, or the fact that you touched on there's not a clear plan, or it appears there's been several plans? Because, I mean, you found that only 36% said that the president has set out a clear plan, while a third said he has no plan at all.
None at all. And so I think that this is part of the messaging campaign. I think White Houses, when they go into a major conflict with another nation on the military basis, they need to have a clear objective and a clear rationale. And I don't think that that has necessarily been painted. You'll see, you know, among Democrats and particularly independents, they are saying that the president doesn't have a clear plan. Not surprisingly, Republicans are saying he does have a clear plan. So there is this deep partisan division and divide within North Carolina. I think it reflects national dynamics as well.
So there is the ongoing conflict in Iran, but there are still other wars happening across the world. Something interesting of note here, that North Carolina seemed more supportive of helping Ukraine than Israel. So what do you think is drawing the distinction there?
That was really a fascinating finding out of this survey. I think certainly Ukraine is still in the news. It's still prevalent. It has been the longest conflict that we've seen now, but there's still a good deal of support for the Ukrainian efforts, both financially and militarily. When it comes to Israel, it's a little bit less. And the division is, you know, again, within the partisan camps. Both sides are looking at this very intently, but a lot of it is driven by the president as well.
When you take all these numbers together, when you talk about the president's approval rating, the skepticism about the war in Iran, and soft numbers for both parties, I mean, what message do you think North Carolina voters are trying to send to folks up on Capitol Hill?
Well, I think certainly for the party in power, they are saying you need to revisit what you're doing and make it clear to us back here in North Carolina what the purpose of this war is, what the dynamics are going to be, and also potentially recognize the economic situation that it's presenting as well. I think that a lot of Republicans are going to be confronting a fairly stiff headwind come November. And if you're laying the groundwork now, 6 months out, that's going to present a real challenge as you go into the true fall campaign.
So we're talking about the midterms. We're, getting toward that. But do you think that this reaction is just temporary because of this moment in foreign policy right now, or is this something that has more deeper meaning?
I think if the war with Iran continues on for the next several weeks, if not months, this is really going to harden public opinion in North Carolina, I think nationally. And it's really not going to be to the benefit of Republicans moving forward. I think that they have to look at the president to say, you need to come up with an exit strategy at some point that makes sense, that doesn't seem like capitulation, but still make the effort on economics, because foreign policy may drive a lot of economic dynamics, but ultimately at the ballot box, it's the presidential approval and what people think about the economy that drives a lot of voters' decision making.
I was going to say things like gas prices, what I'm saying for groceries, are the reasons that many people say they're going to vote.
Exactly.
All right.
Let's talk about the Supreme Court, because they heard oral arguments yesterday when it comes to birthright citizenship. For years, you have heard conservatives like, I think, Antonin Scalia, Clarence Thomas, Alito on the court right now, make arguments for what they call strict constructionist. I'm not a legal scholar by any means, but the idea that the words are there in the document. You don't interpret it.
Right.
The case I heard yesterday among some conservatives is, in this case, there should be some interpretation, because what they meant back then is not what they mean now. Do I sense a difference now?
Well,
it seems to be different.
It seems to be different, and the words do matter. In the 14th Amendment, it says all persons.
Right.
It does not differentiate whether you are born one way or the other in this regard. But what we have also found, particularly here in North Carolina, this issue of birthright citizenship is the most divisive principle of American democracy between Democrats and Republicans. Republicans do not believe that if you are born on American soil, you necessarily automatically get citizenship endowed upon you. Democrats and independents say yes, that citizenship is there because of the language in the Constitution. So I think, whatever the Supreme Court comes up with, I listened to some of the arguments. It sounded like the conservatives were very skeptical of some of the legal theories and bases that the government was presenting to say, are we going to overturn past precedent? Are we going to overturn 100 years worth of jurisprudence on this particular issue? We'll just have to wait and see what the opinion holds.
And I think we have to say that the Constitution does not say that this was specifically for the children of freed slaves.
Right.
That is not in the Constitution.
Right.
And also talk about the president being there. That's just the first time for a sitting president to hear these oral arguments. What do you make of that?
We are in a presidential administration and term that has broken so many norms of American democracy and American government. I wasn't surprised by that, but it is notable to see the chief executive visiting the high court, hearing the arguments made on behalf of his administration, and then getting up and walking out before the opposition had their chance to present as well. Whether it was an intimidation factor, whether he was just interested in it, I don't know.
Professor, we always appreciate your insights.
My
and
pleasure.
your new polling as well.
Thank you.
Keep us posted.
Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.